I still remember the exact moment my world cracked open. It wasn't the kind of dramatic thunderclap you see in movies. No storm rolling in, no music swelling in the background. It was a Tuesday. A plain, ordinary Tuesday. My younger sister Emily had been missing for exactly 4 hours when I realized something was wrong, really wrong. We'd spoken that morning. She'd called just after sunrise, her voice bubbling with energy like always. She'd been heading to the bus stop to get to her part-time job at the library, telling me about some stray dog she'd been feeding for a week. She laughed when I teased her about becoming the crazy dog lady. And that was it, the last time I heard her laugh. By noon, my phone was lighting up with messages from Mom. "Have you heard from Emily?" "She's not answering her phone. She didn't show up at work." At first, I thought she'd just been distracted. Maybe her phone had died. But something in Mom's voice, when I finally called back, it had that quiet tremor. The one she tries to hide made my stomach drop. I told myself not to panic. Emily was 20, old enough to disappear for a few hours without telling anyone. But as I drove over to her apartment, I noticed the little things piling up in my mind like warning signs. She never ignored my calls. She hated being late to work. And that morning, her laugh, it had been a little forced. When I arrived, the front door was locked. Nothing seemed out of place inside, no signs of a struggle, no mess. But her backpack was still there, the one she always carried. Her wallet and keys were on the kitchen counter, and her phone was sitting on her nightstand. That was when panic fully set in. Emily wasn't the type to go anywhere without her phone. The police station smelled faintly of old coffee and copier ink. I sat in a hard plastic chair, filling out the missing person report while an officer named Daniels asked questions in a flat, methodical tone. "When was the last time you saw her? Any arguments recently? Does she have a history of running away?" "No," I kept saying. "She's not the type to just vanish." Daniels gave me the look, half sympathy, half doubt, that I've since learned is standard issue for law enforcement. People go missing every day. Most come back. But there was something different about this. I couldn't explain it, but I knew it in my bones. Emily wasn't coming back on her own. That night, I barely slept. Every creak in the house sounded like footsteps. Every car that passed made my heart jump. I kept replaying our last conversation, trying to remember if she'd said anything unusual. The stray dog, the bus stop, the way she laughed a little too quickly. I started to wonder if there'd been someone else there, listening, maybe watching. By the second day, the police had posted her photo online and sent out alerts. Friends started sharing her picture on social media, Emily smiling, hair tucked behind one ear, the green jacket she wore almost every day. The hashtags multiplied. Strangers commenting things like, "Hope she's found safe," and "Prayers for your family." But somewhere between the lines of those comments, I felt the shift. Hope was slipping away, and suspicion was creeping in. That was when I decided I couldn't just sit around and wait for answers. If the police were treating this like a standard missing person case, then I'd dig deeper myself. I started at the bus stop where she'd last been seen. The little shelter had a cracked plastic bench and a faded schedule taped to the post. Across the street, there was a convenience store with a security camera above the door. The clerk, a wiry man with tired eyes, told me he remembered seeing Emily that morning. "She was standing there, waiting," he said. Then a white van pulled up. She got in. My skin prickled. "Did she look upset?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not exactly, just nervous." A white van. Nervous. That was all I needed to hear. I called Officer Daniels with the information, but his voice was maddeningly calm. "We'll look into it," he said. I could almost hear him writing it down like it was just another line in a report. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at the map I'd printed. I marked the bus stop, the route the van might have taken, and the location of every camera I could find on Google Street View. It wasn't much, but it was more than what the police had told me they were doing. 3 days in, exhaustion was hitting me like a freight train. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw that white van pulling away, Emily inside, and me, standing there in my mind, too far away to stop it. It wasn't until the 5th day that I got the first real break. My phone buzzed with a message from a blocked number. Stop looking for her if you want to stay safe. No signature. Just those words. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. My first instinct was fear, cold, and paralyzing. But then, something else burned hotter underneath it, anger. Whoever had taken Emily thought they could scare me off. They didn't know me at all. Because if there's one thing I can't do, it's stop looking for my sister. And if I had to burn my life to the ground to find her, then so be it. I couldn't shake the image of Detective Harris's face when he'd mentioned foul play. He'd tried to keep it professional, but I caught the hesitation in his voice, the brief flicker of unease in his eyes. It was as if he knew more than he could say. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment from the last day I saw my sister, Emily. The way she'd hugged me a little tighter than usual. The half smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Was she already in trouble and just didn't tell me? The next morning, I decided I couldn't just wait for the police to call me. I needed to do something. Emily had always been adventurous, but cautious. If she was missing, it meant something had gone seriously wrong. I started with her apartment. It had already been searched by the police, but I wanted to look for things they might have overlooked. The moment I stepped inside, I felt the heaviness in the air. Emily's place was always warm and alive, with the scent of fresh coffee or the faint trace of her lavender candles. Now, it smelled stale, and the quiet pressed in on me. I checked her bedroom first. The bed was unmade, which wasn't unusual for her, but on the nightstand was a notebook half under a stack of magazines. I flipped it open and froze. Inside were sketches of a man's face, drawn over and over again in pencil. His features were sharp, with deep-set eyes and a thin scar running down his cheek. There were no names, no explanations, just page after page of this same man. My heart started pounding. Who was he? And why was Emily fixated on him? I slipped the notebook into my bag, deciding to keep it from the police for now. It wasn't that I didn't trust them, but I knew how cases like this sometimes went. They'd get bogged down in procedure while precious time slipped away. I spent the rest of the day retracing Emily's last known movements. The coffee shop down the street was my first stop. The barista recognized her immediately. "Yeah, she was here 2 days before she went missing," she said. She seemed distracted, kept looking over her shoulder. When I showed her the sketch of the man from the notebook, her eyes widened. "That's the guy!" He came in right after she left, asked if she'd been there. Gave me a weird vibe. It was the first real lead I'd had, and it sent a shiver down my spine. That night, I dug deeper. I posted a discreet message on a local online forum, describing the man's scar and asking if anyone had seen him around. Most replies were useless, but one caught my attention. It was from a user named Shadowline. "I know who you're talking about. You don't want to get involved. He's dangerous. Meet me tomorrow, 8 p.m. at Pia Süden." Every instinct told me this could be a trap, but my desperation outweighed my fear. I didn't tell anyone, not even the detective. The next evening, the pier was shrouded in fog, the kind that seemed to swallow sound. I kept my hands in my pockets, one clutching my phone, ready to call for help if things went wrong. A man stepped out from the shadows, not the one from the sketches, but older, with a weathered face and darting eyes. "You're Emily's brother?" he asked in a low voice. When I nodded, he glanced around nervously. "The man you're looking for. His name is Victor Kane. He works for people who make others disappear. Your sister must have crossed him somehow." I asked him where Victor could be found, but the man shook his head. "You don't find him unless he wants you to. And if you keep digging, he'll come for you too." Before I could press him, he melted back into the fog, leaving me with more questions than answers. I walked home that night with a growing sense of dread. This wasn't just a missing person case anymore. It was a game, a dangerous one, where the rules were hidden and the stakes were life and death. That's when I noticed something chilling. On my doorstep was a single envelope with my name on it. Inside was a photograph of Emily, tied to a chair in a dimly lit room. On the back, in messy black ink, were 4 words that turned my blood cold. Stop looking. She's mine. The photo burned in my hands. My first instinct was to rush to Detective Harris, but then I imagined the red tape, the endless questions, the delays. Whoever had Emily was moving fast, and I couldn't afford to wait. I slid the photo back into the envelope and locked it in my desk drawer. I needed to think calmly, logically, despite the panic clawing at my chest. I went back to the notebook with the sketches. On one of the later pages, in faint pencil, there was an address scribbled in the corner. It looked half erased, but I could still make out enough to piece together the location. It was an old industrial district, long abandoned after the factories shut down. The next night, I parked my car 2 blocks away and approached on foot. The buildings loomed like sleeping giants, their windows black and hollow. I moved silently, hugging the shadows. My gut told me Emily was here. The address led me to a warehouse with rusted metal doors and a flickering light over the entrance. Through a gap in the wall, I saw movement 2 men, both armed, standing near a table littered with maps and photographs. My heart stopped when I spotted Emily in the corner, tied to a chair just like in the photo. Her head was down, but I could see her chest rise and fall. She was alive. I couldn't just charge in. I needed a distraction. I slipped back outside, found a loose piece of metal, and hurled it against a dumpster on the far side of the building. The noise echoed like a gunshot. Both guards grabbed their weapons and ran to check it out. This was my only chance. I crept inside and reached Emily. "It's me," I whispered, working quickly on the ropes. Her eyes widened, tears spilling down her cheeks. "We have to go now," I told her. But we weren't alone. From the shadows, Victor Kane emerged. He looked exactly like the sketches, cold eyes, scar on his cheek, and a smile that made my skin crawl. "You shouldn't have come here," he said softly, like he was scolding a child. "Now you both belong to me." Before he could reach for his weapon, I lunged, driving my shoulder into his chest. We crashed to the ground, and the gun skidded across the floor. Emily kicked it toward me, and I grabbed it, hands shaking but steady enough to aim. "Stay down," I told him, my voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. We backed toward the exit, but one of the guards had already returned, shouting. I fired a single shot into the air, not to kill, but to make them hesitate. It worked. In that moment, Emily and I bolted into the night, running until our lungs burned. We didn't stop until we reached my car. I threw it into gear, and we sped off into the darkness. Emily clung to my arm, her voice trembling. "I knew you'd come." By the time we reached the police station, the adrenaline had begun to fade, replaced by exhaustion. Detective Harris listened quietly as we told him everything. This time, there was no hesitation in his eyes, only determination. A week later, they found Victor Kane's hideout abandoned. He was gone, vanished into the cracks of the world where men like him thrive. But Emily was safe, and that was all that mattered. Even now, when the nights are too quiet, I sometimes catch myself glancing at the shadows, half expecting to see that scarred face watching me. Maybe he's still out there. Maybe one day he'll come back. But if he does, I'll be ready. Because I learned something in those dark days, fear can paralyze you, but love will make you move mountains. And for my sister, I'd do it all again.